Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another live session at Reactor. My name is Rav, and I'm the program manager here at Reactor London. Before we get into the session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful, please be kind, ask a lot of good questions. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. So today we have a session on Fabric Copilot by Liam. And with that, I am now going to hand it over to him so that he can take over. Hi,
Lovely.
Liam.
Hi, Rav. Lovely. Thanks very much. Great. My screen is sharing. Firstly, to introduce myself, Liam Houtlett. I am a BI and analytics technical specialist at Microsoft UK and have been so for the last 9 years or so, so predominantly focusing on Power BI. But here today to talk to you about Fabric Copilot, and we will go into exactly what that sort of means as we go through. But I'm going to take you on a little bit more of a personal journey as we go through. You might have been a little bit intrigued by the name of this session. My analytical journey to becoming F1 world champion. So as I think I said in my bio, this is a absolute passion of mine is Formula One, and I believe that AI and all this exciting revolution that we're going through at the moment, and the technology that's being brought into every industry, is allowing us to achieve the absolute impossible. I've been told that it's impossible to become F1 world champion many times, but now I believe that we've got the technology to get us to give us the ability to achieve our dreams. So that's what we're going to be going through today. This session, all jokes aside, is we're going to be going through all the technology. There's only a few slides. Most of it's going to be demos. We're going to be talking not just at a technical level, but also at a business level as well. So whether you're an end user decision maker type, or a business analyst, or anything sort of in between, as well, a data professional, then hopefully there's lots of good stuff for you to get from here. So let's talk through this. So the dream. Excuse me. I should also say that I've got a little bit of a cold at the moment, so I do apologise for any coughing, spluttering, and so on. I'll try to keep it to the minimum. So the dream. So this is me at Silverstone last year, and this is the dream. How do we get up onto that podium? I should say I'm not playing favourites. I've got merchandise from most of the British teams. Apparently, in my dream, I can't decide if I'm driving for Mercedes or Aston Martin. But that's what we want to accomplish, or I want to accomplish anyway. And how did I get this idea? So when all of this new exciting ChatGPT type AI technology was being first talked about, I picked up the morning newspaper, obviously, and read about this, and I thought, there we go, that's how we can achieve it. And believe it or not, this image was created by AI. I was going to change the prompt and say, you need to get rid of the hair, get rid of the glasses, but then I thought, hey, when I'm F1 world champion, I'll be able to afford some luscious new locks, and the glasses, they obviously make you look smarter as well. So I thought I'll keep them in. So that brings us to the technology itself. So let's introduce Fabric first. Many of you may know what this is already, so we'll keep it fairly brief. But even more of you will probably be familiar with Power BI, Synapse, Azure Data Factory potentially as well. And Microsoft Fabric is a new family, relatively new now. It's been around a little while, to Microsoft, where we are combining technology from these platforms into a software as a service offering, which provides an end-to-end analytics platform at your fingertips. So everything from building warehouses, lake houses, if you want to do real-time ETL, machine learning, all that kind of stuff before we then get into the visualization layer, which is obviously included in there as well. All of these capabilities are now offered under a single license, a single platform. It's all software as a service. You click a button, you've got a lake house, a warehouse, whatever you like, kind of at your fingertips. Many of you will probably also be aware that we've got something called Copilot that's been introduced from Microsoft over the last year or so. And this is our way of infusing generative AI into all of our products. M365 Copilot is probably the most well-known, I guess, out in the market, which has been GA for quite a while now, and in many of our other software as a services and so on. And Fabric has not been left out at all. So underneath the Fabric Copilot a technology family, whatever you want to call it, underneath Fabric Copilot, we've got many guises for Copilot in here. And this covers the infused generative AI across all of these different personas. So now when you go into Fabric, you may not just be going into build some reports and dashboards and all that kind of thing. That's what a BI persona would expect. But maybe you're a data engineer. You go into the data engineer persona, and then all of the tools available that you'd expect for a data engineer will be there for you. And whether you're going into creating a warehouse or opening a notebook as a data scientist or whatever, we've got Copilot solutions across all of these. Some are still in preview, some in private preview, some in public preview. I'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's just been released into GA recently as well, more on the Power BI side of things. Today's session, we'd be here all day if we went deep into absolutely everything that Fabric Copilot does. So what I'm going to focus on is the stuff that's predominantly in Power BI and some of the other things around it that would really benefit those kind of BI and analytics scenarios. So then we're on to the demos. So no more slides. Actually, there might be one or two at the end, but let's jump into these demos now. So let's start where most people start, from a Power BI point of view, which is in Power BI Desktop. So let's talk this through. So this is as I said, a personal passion, hobby, following Formula One and so on. And this is a report that I've built. And some of you, if you're F1 fans as well, you'll be familiar with F1 TV, where you can go back and watch historic races going way back. What I was finding was that I kind of get you almost get caught up in the hype. Like we've got the Canadian Grand Prix coming up very soon, and we kind of know which teams are fighting at the top. We kind of know that I don't know, Red Bull's not quite on as on form as it was last year, which is quite exciting. And those little bits that get built up in the news, and you miss all that when you're watching historic races. So this is my report to basically say this is where the teams are at in the championship before we go into this race, which you are about to watch on F1 TV. So here I can go, we've got the 2010 final race of the season, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, where we had, I think it was the top four could have been F1 world champion at this stage. So that was hugely exciting. And this is giving me the context going, there you go, you've got Alonso, Mark Webber, Vettel and Hamilton up there vying out. So suddenly that race is so much more exciting because I know what to look for. So yeah, this is my report. If you haven't used if you're wondering how this is created, that's the Visio custom visual added in there. So if you change the race as we go through, you'll see that filters as well. And then we can start the race, and you can see lap 1, and I'll just sort of follow it through. We can see what happens after lap 10. You can see the interval as we go down there and so on. Over here, you can see obviously you had accident and safety car at the start, and then you can see pit stop strategy strategies, maybe slower pit stops or people crashing out and all that kind of thing. So that's what this has created, and I'm using this to analyze the races as I go through. And let's see. I've also got my sim racing rig over there as well. So let's figure out if I've got what it takes to become world champion. But there's a lot of analytics that needs to go into this. First and foremost is something called DAX, which a lot of you may have come across. So we try to make Power BI as low code, no code as possible, being able to just click around and create visualizations and that kind of thing. But when you want something a little bit more complex, in terms of analyzing business logic or so on, then you may need to create measures and calculations, and this is using a language called DAX. And sometimes when you're brand new to Power BI, that becomes a little bit of an uphill barrier to people starting, and give you a very honest appraisal of DAX. It's very easy to get started with because it looks and feels like Excel worksheet formula language. But when you get to more complex calculations, like the ones that we've done in here to calculate things like let's find the interval between two drivers in milliseconds, then we start to get to far more complex DAX within here. So this is where we're going to introduce Copilot for the first time and try and break down some of these. Let's create a measure description using Copilot over here. So let's click on that. As you've seen, that's the DAX up there. It's relatively complex DAX. So maybe let's say this is a more of a business type report in an organization, and the authors left the organization. You pick this up and you go, yeah, what are they trying to do here? Copilot is telling you straight away, it's calculating the time difference in milliseconds between the current driver's race time and the opponent's race time, and blah blah blah. And we can add that in as well. So this is good practice to add in measure descriptions, especially if you've got that centralized semantic model that you're sharing with the rest of the business, to enable them to build their own reports and all that sort of thing as well. But let's go into the sort of the really exciting bit here. So we're introducing a relatively new view inside Power BI Desktop called the DAX Query View, which you can turn on the preview settings if you go to the options and settings in Power BI Desktop and turn that on. And then you also need to turn Copilot on. I'm going to come back towards the end. I'll talk about how you can enable all of that. So don't worry, we will go through that. But let's look at the functionality in here. So there's a couple of ways of using the DAX query view in here. So the first way is potentially using it as almost like to create a query and then have a table at the bottom that you're evaluating to give you insights into your data. Similar maybe to DBAs who use SQL Server Management Studio or whatever, where you've got a query interface to stick your T-SQL in, and then you've got what's returned at the bottom. So let's do something like that. So we're going to go show drivers and the total number of wins, and also create a rank or and click OK. And let's see what that returns. Also, I'm going to try and do as many demos as possible live. There's always a slight risk to that, but fingers crossed it all goes well. So yeah, let's keep that query and let's run it. So we've had some DAX written there. It's added in a column to rank them as well. Some of you may know that rank is a slightly more complex DAX function, so it's just handled that for us. And there we go at the bottom. Obviously got Lewis and Schumacher up at the top with by far and away the most wins, which is great. So that's built us a sort of query view for us to start to analyze the data inside it and evaluate the data. And the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to click on suggest measures, and this is just going to look at our entire data set, and it's going to go, yeah, here's some potentially useful measures that you might want to add into your model. So it's given us things like let's look at the total driver points, total constructor points, average lap time, all that kind of thing. So it's used its common sense and gone, yeah, I can see what the data set is trying to achieve, what it's all about. It's obviously something to do with motorsport and then it's given us some useful measures out of the box straight away and said, yeah, maybe you want to add these into your model if you're going to be using them over and over again. And then, so here I wanted to not only yes is potentially a word for it, but also here, once you've created your measure and define it as measure, you then simply click a button, and then that's the barrier or the supposed barrier to DAX massively reduced right there. Other things as well is you can come in here and you can get it to explain DAX. That's sort of that you've written out. You can suggest it to help you fix it. You can look at it. Maybe if we hadn't added rank in there, you could say explain how the rank function works. And not only would it take stuff from the documentation online, which is what we all have previously done, as we go and search on Google or Bing and find the documentation, but it will also go, I can see the context you're looking at it in, and then give you an example of that as you go through it as well. Really, really cool stuff. And then just a couple of other things inside whilst we're inside Power BI Desktop. So the other one as well is many of you, and we're going to talk more about this later on, many of you may have used Q pretty much, I think, in Power BI for the last, and I say, again, with a very honest appraisal, that many of you may have used it, or many may have tried to use it, and we'll talk a little bit about the issues later on with Q&A and why not as many people have been able to successfully use it over the years as we'd like to. And one of the solutions to that is quite a number of years ago, we created this this Q&A visual and then had the Q&A setup, the settings cog, as part of it, and added synonyms in there because we were trying to sort of trying to get in the heads of the end users and think what different ways could they be talking about our data, which so instead of the column named this, maybe they'll use an abbreviation or whatever, and that's where synonyms come into play. But that's obviously something that takes time to set up. What you can do here, I've already done it, so the button's not there, but it would say improve with Copilot or something like that. You click a button and it's then going to add all these different synonyms in there without you sort of having to do anything. So let's look at some examples where races, event, tournament, rally, circuit name could be referred to as track name or venue or course or whatever it is. Even if I've not defined this anywhere or told it anywhere, and it's figured out that yeah, FP1 means practice, or FP is free practice in Formula One terms. But it's figured that all out itself. Great. Okay. Let's move up into the Power BI service. Sorry, the Fabric service now. So we are now up in the Power BI service. You'll notice it's a small but a really awesome new feature is now you may see in there as well. Also, the other thing you might think, well, where's there lots of pretty colors against it as well? And this is another new feature that if you haven't tried out yet, you should have seen landed in your tenants if you're using it already. But task flows to be able to organize artifacts or items, fabric items, because we've got so much more to kind of organize and go through. So if you wanted to create a task flow or a workflow inside here and bucket those into different buckets, then you absolutely can do as well. So that's a nice new feature. So let's go into what we actually have. So the first thing I'm going to jump into is a data flow. So this is part of the data factory experience inside Fabric. This is so there's two main components of the data factory experience in Fabric. We've got data flows, and then we've got data pipelines as well. Data pipelines are great for orchestration and that sort of things. Or wanting to actually transform data again with as little code as possible, then this is a perfect environment for you to do so. And if you are Power BI, if you are a Power BI person or somebody with Power BI experience and have built reports in the past, environment, which is of course Power Query, or even if you are an advanced Excel user as well, then this is going to be familiar to you as well if you've used Power Query in the last 15 years or so, I think maybe. So let's just get this loaded up. We've got some tables that I've pulled from. Let's go to the F1 results table in here. And get that loaded up. Okay, so let's look at a few things. So again, we're focusing on Copilot. So you'll notice that there's a Copilot button up here and a Copilot pane that's popped out on the right hand side, and it's going to our data. So I'm not going to waste any time showing some of the really sort of mundane and boring stuff like, oh, help me filter this, or add in a new column that kind of does this, or whatever. I'm going to show you just a couple of things that impressed me when I sort of first tried this out. One of them is so let's look at things like fastest lap possible, because it's been registered as text, and we can't force this to become an integer or a decimal. So there's whether they are supposed to be blanks or nulls or NAs or whatever it is, but that's forcing us to keep them as text. What you'll notice is that what we can do is we can right click on that and just replace it. But then we've got it in all of these columns over here. And I don't think there's any buttons that you can just click a couple of buttons to do it against the entire table. Whereas what we can do is we can type in here, or I'm going to copy from my prompts, replace /n in all columns with an actual null. So I want it to be, yeah, a literal null in all of these columns. So it's going to allow me to then transform that column into an integer or a decimal or so on. So let's hopefully this works all right. I think, yeah, that looks good. Right, I'm going to try it one more time. It did this yesterday. I did try it this morning. Again, curse of the live demos, and I have got backup videos just in case. Let's try it one more time. Otherwise, I'm not going to stay too long. So this one, the stuff that's in preview can be a little bit buggy sometimes, which is what we're seeing right now. It works absolutely fine this morning, so sod's law that it starts to fail now. Right. Okay. It's not quite done. It has done what it wanted, but not in the way that that it usually does. So it's added in a new line up here where it's found the \n, and then we're replacing it with a null. And then it's listed out all of the literal columns. What it usually does is it looks at it takes source and uses it's an M function, I think it's called table columns or something like that from to the same uh, result. But don't worry, we've got another example of where it's really awesome, and hopefully that will be fine as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change fastest lap speed to a decimal very quickly, and I've noticed that proper motorsport people, proper drivers and everything, they do everything in kilometers an hour and understand miles per hour and kilometers an hour. I don't understand kilometers per hour very well, so I'm going to change this. So I'm going to ask it to change it into miles per hour. So I'm going to stick into Copilot, convert speed from kilometers an hour to miles per hour. That's all I've put within there. And let's see it hopefully work its magic. Come on. Yeah, that's looking good. Didn't even specify the actual column. It's found that it is also it's also gone and found the actual calculation to turn miles into and done that automatically, which I think is mentioned, and you've already seen it can be a little bit buggy. This is still very much in preview in these sort of earlier days, but this everything that I'm showing you is in the demo tenant. So this is all available for you to try and get started with today, for you to play around with desktop. I should also say I'm not product group as well. I so yeah, any roadmap questions, things like that, and I can't promise anything like that. But yeah, it's not in Power BI Desktop at the moment. But what you can do is you can run it in here, copy the code up at the top, and just bring that down into Power BI Desktop if you want to do that as well. I've done that a couple of times myself, and it works really nicely. Great. So that's data flows, and what you've hopefully seen is that we've touched a little bit of the big difference between that and Power Query in Power BI Desktop is, I should have shown it before I closed it, is down the bottom right hand corner, you've got a destination that you're publishing to. Obviously with Power BI Desktop, you're just publishing to a semantic model that's going to be published up into the Power BI, into the Fabric service. Whereas here, you've then got some options of where you want to publish it to, whether it's a lakehouse, a Fabric lakehouse, a warehouse, even Azure SQL, I think, and so on. So that's the main difference there. But yeah, you don't need to be a DBA data engineer type person to start building out all of these workflows and so on. The next bit, let's go. So we're still on. Yeah, okay. So we've got my semantic model here. So let's say, again, in your business or wherever you work or whatever, you've created a semantic model that you then want to share with the rest of the business, so they can then go and either build their own reports or get their own insights and so on and so forth. This is all about driving that true data culture, which we've been talking about for years and years now. And yeah, publishing a semantic model and sharing that semantic model so that people in the organization can just come here and go and click on create report and then self-serve themselves is fantastic. Really, really good practice. But when they come in here and they look at this and go, it's a blank canvas, yeah, where do I sort of start? That's when the problems start to arise, and that's when people start to go, how do I get this into Excel? And then I've got it into Excel. Now I feel at home, and I'll point Power BI to the Excel. So I'm still using Power BI, but it's pointing at Excel now. Yeah, and obviously we don't need to spending any time talking about the issues that sort of raises. And there's some cool new features inside, and even older features inside here to allow you to explore the data. One thing that's relatively new that you may not have come across too much yet is just this explore button up at the top for you to be able to go around and start going. Let's get their full names in there, and I don't know, stick in number of points that they've scored or whatever. So we're starting to explore this data and get an idea for what's inside this data before we actually build a report. And also, sometimes I'm going to come on to this more later on, you don't need to build a report or a dashboard every single time you want an insight out of there. So start using this kind of technology to reduce the number of redundant reports that are out there. Yeah. But let's come back to Copilot now, and I'll talk a little bit more later on about what I sort of very briefly mentioned there. So let's look at Copilot, and now we are firmly inside the Copilot for Power BI world here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is tell me about this data set. Give me an idea of what's inside here. I didn't build it. Let's have a look, and I'll zoom in so you can actually read it for yourself. So this data set provides comprehensive information about various aspects of motor racing events, including blah blah blah, and then it gives you some ideas of potentially what you could use it to create. So analyze performance trends, compare drivers, constructors, make informed predictions about future races, or become an F1 world champion. That's the real reason we want this, isn't it? So then, great. I have an idea of what's inside my data set. Obviously, you've sort of, I didn't really walk through the data model, but you may have seen that there's lots and lots and lots of tables in here, all related together. It doesn't matter if you've got multiple tables, if you've got one single table, whether it's coming from Excel CSV files or a relational database management system, or wherever it's coming from, whether you're using import, direct query, the new direct lake mode and Fabric, Copilot works over all of it. So great, I've got that. Can you hold my hand a little bit further? So let's go and click on suggest content for this report. And this is now looking at the data model, and it's trying to find all the different useful pages of reports that it could potentially build for you and create out of the box. A second, there we go. So driver performance analysis, constructor performance, we do individual race analysis, season trends and insights. Those are just some pages that I thought, yeah, here's some potentially useful pages that you could create in your report. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a bespoke prompt. We're going to click on create a page analyzing the characteristics of a circuit focusing on lap speed. So this is me saying, hey, I've got my sim rig over there, playing F1 23 and all that. I want to figure out if I'm fast enough to compare myself to the real drivers out there. So let's have a look at this. What you've seen, did that pretty quickly actually. Is it's created a page of a report for us. And this is where I quite often talk about it being a co-pilot, not an autopilot, because you'll look at this and you'll go, there's some things that we need to change here, aren't there? The first one being it's all pink and purpley and all that kind of thing, whereas our organization likes whatever brand colors that are associated with your organizations. So that's the first obvious one. And I believe there are features and functionalities coming to Power BI Copilot to allow you to, I think, linked with report themes and that sort of thing to design your report or get it looking like how you want it to look like much quicker and so on. But there's also some excuse me, there's also some visualizations that we might go, yeah, I don't like it being analyzed with maybe it's used a line chart to do categorical analysis or whatever, and you go, yeah, let's change that. But what it's done is it's giving us, I like to call it a foundation or a starting block to start on. So I don't know, if you think back to maybe if you had to write essays at school or dissertations or whatever it is, and you're just staring at that blank screen and you're like, I've got to write 10,000 words here. Getting started is often the hardest thing, and that's how I kind of like it here. This is giving you inspiration, it's getting you started, giving you some ideas for visualizations that you could potentially build within here. We go, great, okay. So let's and then yeah, let's look at the next Copilot functionality that's inside here is something called smart narratives. And some of you may be familiar with this because this has been around in Power BI for quite a while now. We've got the smart narrative visualization, which I'll select Copilot. The other one is just the sort of traditional and let's give this a second to run. What this is going to do, I'm just going to run with the kind of the out of the box prompt, which summarize this data, but you could provide something that's far more bespoke. Answer likely questions from leadership is a good one. Maybe define the leadership. Maybe go, is it finance data? Is it CFO? That's going to be asking questions, trying to predict the kind of questions that are going to come. I don't know, the chief people officer or whatever, if it's something to do with expenses and finance and people and all that sort of thing. So this is now going to create a narrative on the page. So I was an analyst before I came to Microsoft. I worked, and this is taking a little while. It's actually going to result in, there we go. Okay, fine. I'll come back to that in a second. So yeah, back to so I was an analyst before that. It was a marketing agency in the West End, and we did marketing for West End shows and arena tours and that kind of thing. And I was an analyst there, and my job was to build the report, which I built in Excel. I PDF'd it up, attached it to an email. I found all the insights and I wrote up commentary within there. And right here, in the space of, it's been less than 10 minutes, I think, that we've been talking through that, and most of it has been me talking anyway. We've created a report. Yeah, it's not perfect. We've still got some stuff to do over the top of it. And we've created some interesting commentary down here as well. So the average speed of the fastest lap is that, and so on and so forth. Circuit data, it's blah blah blah. Yeah, lots of information there, and I've done the majority of my old job there with ease, and that means that I can now go, which is all the stuff that I used to want to do. I can now go and say, I'd love to learn more about R or Python and try to do some data sciencey stuff in here. How can we predict ticket sales when a certain event on, or back then it was the Big Brother final is on Friday night. How's that going to affect people attending a show, or I don't know, whatever it is. And you can start to make yourself even more useful by going out and learning even more stuff, which is I'm sure why most people attend these kind of courses, because you want to learn. So you're probably similar to me and many of my colleagues. And this is enabling you to get rid of those mundane tasks as such. And the beautiful thing about smart narratives is that this sits on the canvas and is interactive and dynamic. So if we now go and filter this on what is obviously the greatest circuit on here, which is Silverstone, and slightly biased, but let's filter that now. Not only do all the visuals on the page filter to Silverstone, but in a second, that should automatically do it. Shouldn't have to click refresh. I don't know what's going on there, but that should now give us interesting insights and summarize all of the data that is showing for Silverstone. So I'll let that run. Let's pop this open. Let's focus on. I know we've got. No, I want to focus on lap speed. Oh, I think I'm covering it up. That was silly of me. With the lives, I want to focus on lap speed. That's what we were talking about before, wasn't it? How fast am I? And let's go and click on the ellipsis, and we can sort this by year. And let's see if there's any interesting trends going on here. So remember, we're filtered on Silverstone now. We're only focusing on one circuit. And here, yeah, we've got some interesting insights going on. We've got a very clear, trough going on there in 2008. And this is where I'm going to deviate away a little bit from Fabric Copilot and try and give you a really quick and easy win if you haven't done this already. So I'm just going to copy this prompt over, and I'm going to pop open Copilot within here. And this kind of technology is available through Bing Copilot. We've got Windows Copilot, as you probably see the icon down in my bottom right, and also part of M365 Copilot as well. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go, great, I don't think I've got the data inside my data model to answer the questions about why there's a massive dip in speed on in 2008 at Silverstone. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to ask Bing Copilot here. So I think that this information could be public, could be on the internet. So let's go and ask it. So what could have caused cars to be slower in the 2008 Silverstone Grand Prix is what I'm asking. And that's going to come back and say, come on. There we go. So officially known as, was held on this date. One of the main factors that could have caused cars to be slower in this race was the weather. There we go. It's told me. The race day was marked by rain, which made the track surface treacherous. Wet conditions can significantly affect the speed of the cars due to reduced grip and visibility. And then it's going on to talk about Lewis's incredible win that year that's gone down in history. So there we go. I've got some information. I didn't have weather data in here, and if I'd never watched that, then I wouldn't know that it was raining. I could have used my gut instinct to see that. Yeah, I know a bit about Formula One, and I see that there's a massive dip there, and I could have used my gut instinct and said, yeah, that's probably rain. That's usually what makes stuff go much slower. But now I've got actual data insight coming out. To confirm that gut instinct. So instead of us relying on gut all the time, this is how you can potentially use data insight to confirm that. And the reason I popped open Bing Copilot as well is because you can access this whether you've got a work account, a personal account, or whatever. And if there's obviously today is all about Fabric Copilot, and yeah, it'd be awesome if you go and start using Fabric and trying to use Copilot, Fabric Copilot as well. But one other call to action, which I say to loads of people, even my mates when I'm talking to them, is download the Copilot app onto your phone. And for my entire adult life, I've always had the same 4 icons at the bottom, and now I've replaced one of them with Copilot down there, and I go to that every time I want to ask a question instead of going to Google or Bing or so on. So yeah, call to action, go and do that. Absolutely, it's free, it's amazing. Even I love so I live fairly close to Longleat Forest and that sort of area, and I love going for walks, and even just taking a picture of the tree and going, oh, what is that interesting tree? Some of you might think that's cool. Some of you might think I'm incredibly boring, like my wife. And but yeah, go and have a look at that. The next bit, so that's very much from the authoring point of view. The next bit is we're going to look at it from the end user point of view. Unfortunately, I have to show a video of this because this is functionality that I really want to show because it's stuff that's just landed in the last week or so, the announcements, which I'll talk about in a second. But it hasn't quite landed in my demo tenant, so I've created a video for this instead. But I'm gonna talk through it as we go through. So I've opened up a report here. So this is now an HR type report. I thought I've had a good look at the F1 data, and I thought I'm not actually sure if I am going to be driving, and the reason is because I'm too tall. I'm 6'5". I'm not going to fit in an F1 car. That is the only reason I'm giving up on my F1 dream. So now we're coming back to reality a little bit, and I'm going to show you some more businessy type data. I'm going to use an HR demo, which is very cross industry, and will I'm sure resonate and land and be understood by many, by hopefully all of you. So let's look at this. We've got and this is a report that's been created by Copilot, as you can see on here, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any report. And we've popped open Copilot, but we're now looking at this as an end user, not an author anymore. So let's click play and run through it. So we've popped open Copilot. And the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and click on give me an executive summary. So I'll try and pause it as we go through. So it's and zoom, and I'm not going to read through all that, but if you want, I've zoomed in. So if you want to have a quick look at what it's sprung back, then you can do. But this is very similar to like the smart narrative summarizing the data within there. This is looking at your report and at your model, and I can explain the difference there and how that relates to some of the recent announcements in a second. And it's coming up with as much useful information as it possibly can. So this is kind of us not 100% sure, but now we're going to start asking it some far more bespoke questions. And this is where I'm going to circle back to Q&A natural language. So let's look at the prompt. Tell me key traits of employees with an awesome satisfaction level. So Power BI has never defined that. It doesn't even know what an employee is. An employee is essentially each row inside my Azure SQL table. It doesn't know that. And then it certainly doesn't know when we start to use emotional language, awesome, poor, terrible, great, whatever it is, satisfaction level. And so that's where Q&A really struggled, is you start asking it prompts where it's not going to start guessing what columns relate to that, or so on and so forth. It hasn't got that capability historically. So that's why Q&A and natural language has not been used anywhere near as much as it should have been. If you ever saw someone like me demo it over the years, then yeah, you think Q&A looks absolutely fantastic, because but that's because I've demoed it over demo data, which is extremely clean and sort of ready to go. But more importantly, there's only one person asking it questions, and I know exactly what to ask it, and more importantly, what not to ask it. When you release that into an organization, you're sharing with hundreds, if not thousands of people, then trying to define the business logic, the linguistic schema, the synonyms, and all that kind of thing, that becomes a day job in itself. That's why Q&A wasn't used as such. But now you introduce the power of the large language model, the power of OpenAI and GPT underneath this. To put it simply, I believe it's just common sense that has been added into here. I'm sure it's far more complex than that. But now it's taken common sense. It hasn't actually defined what it thinks an awesome satisfaction level here. Sometimes it does, and it says that's higher. Let's say it's higher than 80% or whatever. So sometimes it literally defines that. Yeah, it's used its common sense to do that, and then it's analyzed against some of the categories and dimensions and things like that within there. So that's where it's really uh, uh, helping over and above. So then on to the next prompt, which has disappeared up, but it was basically, I said, what is causing people to leave my organization? Which is an incredibly loaded question. I think you've got people in the organization asking questions like that. You're going, that's a little bit scary, isn't it? And I think Copilot has answered this question in the same way that I, as a human analyst, would. So this data behind it was only one table with about 12 columns and about 15,000 rows. It's not huge or ginormous or anything like that, with loads and loads of detail in there. And if you gave that to me as a human analyst, I'd say, look, I can. There's a column that says left in there, which is ones and zeros, and I can see who's left, and maybe I can analyze what kind of departments have left, or the salaries or whatever, of course, maybe cause people to leave. But what I am not going to say is those are the definitive reasons why people are leaving the organization. That is exactly what Copilot has done here. It's given us department workload, started using sort of very human data, human language here to explain those kind of things. But then the bit that I'd love showing when I show this prompt is it's important to note that these observations are correlations and might not fully capture the reasons for employees leaving. There could be other factors not covered by the available data, such as management style, employee engagement, blah, blah, blah. So it's saying that. And this, when I saw this, I was like, okay, I can trust this now, to an extent. Always be careful with AI and always double check things and that sort of thing. But I could see where our product group was taking this now and trying to make sure that it's not excuse me, it's not leading people up the garden path, or hallucinating, or so on and so forth. I should just say at this point that this does not wave a magic wand over rubbish data and suddenly it's all fine. The old saying of rubbish in equals rubbish out has not gone away. It's so important to make sure your data is clean. It can be raw-ish data. If I showed you the data behind this, it's got all of this sort of thing or whatever just from a column that is ones and zeros with left and question mark up at the top. So that's quite raw data, but it is very clean data, 100%. So let's going onto the newer stuff. So what you'll notice is that there's a toggle up at the top that says preview, and this is what's come out over the last week or so. We announced at Build a couple of weeks ago that we are going GA, so general availability. We're coming out of preview essentially for Power BI Copilot, which is part of Fabric Copilot, as you've seen. There's many parts of it, and the one bit that's gone GA is the Power BI Copilot bit. So the functionality, if you've been playing around with it at all over the last however many months, that has gone GA now. And what that does, what we've demonstrated, is that it looks at a page of a report and answers questions about that single page of the report. So if the data's not on that page, you're not going to get answers about it. That is now, when you turn on the preview, when this hopefully starts to roll out over the next couple of weeks or whatever it will be, on the global rollout over tenants, there's two really cool new features that are going to be introduced. The first one is that it's going to look back at the entire semantic model, not just that page of the report. And then the second one is, I'll let it play as well. What's the difference between average last evaluation and their current average satisfaction level? And what it's going to return to me, instead of a big, long, verbose paragraph of rich information in there, it's just going to give me a number. So 10% it's increased. So there's a couple of really awesome things that's just happened there. The first one is I've spent a lot of time with customers who have been POCing this type of thing, and I've watched the prompts that they stick in it, and sometimes you just want to know what the average revenue is, or the average salary, or I don't know, whatever it is, and you just want a number. You don't want a big long text of information, and that's what it's given us there. And notice, those of you who have known Power BI for a while, that's a Power BI visualization. That's a card there, and that's the second big announcement that's coming with the preview feature here, is that it's now returning visualizations, which is what Q&A natural language was really, really good at. This is basically large language models and OpenAI's Q&A and natural language merged together, and it's awesome. But then the second awesome thing here is I've basically created a calculation here. There's no DAX calculation in my model to calculate that. It's done it on the fly. And then I've said, can I see it by department as a column chart? And it's now, because obviously that's the average of that calculation over the entire organization. I want to see it as a visualization across departments, and there we go, it's produced it, and you can pop that open. If you did this as an author, you could add it to your chart, to your report as well. So that is that's everything that I'm sort of showing today. There's lots more. Actually, sorry, there's one more thing, though I think we are almost out of time. What I was going to talk about, two more things, is why can't I click on? It, so one very quickly, I'm just going to let this play in the background. This is something called AI skills, not actually a Copilot as such, but I was talking earlier about not having to create a report or a dashboard every single time you want to get an insight out of this. And AI skills is the way, is the ability to connect to your data in Fabric and then surface that, etc. You'll see it's going to turn English into TC. But the really cool things as part of business chat or M365 chat, I can't remember what it's called now, in terms of M365 Copilot, or into your own portal or environment or whatever it is, which means that, yeah, I want to get an insight from my report. I have to not only click open another browser or go to for it. Instead, I just go into Teams, open it up, and ask it a question. It just looks back at your Fabric warehouse, lakehouse, whatever, and there you've got an answer to data. I can't believe I'm saying that, being a Power BI person for so long, that you don't need a report and dashboard every time, but it's no, it's super important. The other thing that I was going to go through is how to enable this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass on to Rav the documentation, which is very, very clear on the requirements that you need. It's basically an F64 or above, or if you have a Power BI Premium PSKU, then that will enable it as well. Although be aware that they are deprecated, and but we'll pass that documentation on to you. Rav, I can't see. Oh no, I can see. I can see the comments. Sorry, I couldn't see them before. Any questions? Why are you working in Synapse and not through the Fabric unified view? So that was through Fabric. You may have seen that there's a Synapse type logo down in the bottom left, but that definitely was Fabric. Where's my cursor gone? Kind of see the confusion. So yeah, because we've taken that Synapse technology and put it inside Fabric, we've kind of kept some of that terminology within there. So apologies, that's confusing. This is definitely Fabric. Yeah, and Copilot not in Azure Synapse as such. Cool. Any other questions?
Maybe we'll give it like a couple of seconds if anyone else wants to ask any questions.
Yeah, whilst we're waiting for that to come through, I may as well very quickly show, if you are the Fabric admin. Once you've got the licensing in place, you just come into tenant settings, and then it's right at the very bottom. You got actually enabling it, although this can be enabled directly from the delegated tenant settings for the capacity, dedicated capacity settings by a capacity admin. So it doesn't need the tenant admin for that one. But then this one here about data potentially being processed outside your capacities region, that's obviously a very important one. If you're in Europe, then your data will stay in Europe, and there's I think processing inside the US as well. If you're in UK, you do need to turn this on currently, so that's a slight downside of having your capacity in the UK. But that will all be in the documentation that I'll share with Rav, who I believe will be sending out following this. I love that comment from Comset. Sounds like a fun project.
Okay, since we don't have any more questions, Liam, I think we're going to wrap up. And if you'll obviously send over all the resources, and I will send them out on the post thank you email, and the resources will also be underneath the video.
Cool. Cutting out a little bit there, but I think I heard sticking the resources will be under the video.
Yes.
On
yeah. Well,
YouTube, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely. I think there are some internet issues at my end. I think there's some slight internet issues, but thank you very much, Liam. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the session.
Sure, if you
Thank you. Thanks, Liam.